So I'm gonna go over this. I had it started already. This was a ring that I was doing that I actually started doing on the wrong size. But I'm gonna do something with this now because it's here. All this is I believe I forget what gauge it is, but it's half hard, maybe like 13, something around that. But with this, basically all I did was I used my saw. And I kind of marked it beforehand so I had a guideline, but you just saw right into it to split it and kind of measure out how far you want to go. And then you can kind of form it. It helps if you have like one of those ring tools that helps form the band with when you're using like a heavier kind of metal that's going to be harder to shape. I don't have that. I wish I did. That's on my list. But you pretty much can split it, and then you can want to like go in and file, which I still need to do a little bit more in this one, but you want to go in and file the sides down so it's like not sharp or anything. And then from here, what I'm going to do is take a file to the top and kind of flush it out so that when I'm doing a bezel setting, I'm just going to turn it into like a simple bezel ring just to show you guys. But basically I'm going to flush this out and then be able to set my bezel on top, and we'll go through the bezel too. So now that you can see this is like relatively flush, so I'll be able to set a clean bezel up on there. And I'm just messing around right now, but this is, you know, just something to show you guys. So of course I forgot my tripod, so just bear with me. This is the stone I'm going to be setting, and this is the bezel gallery wire that I'm using. So when you're doing this, make sure you have a flat surface and start from one of the sides. And you're just kind of wrap it around and make sure you got the size there. And also make sure your bezel is tall enough. This is gonna actually be perfect, I think, for the height of this stone. So once you have it all the way around, you're basically gonna mark it around where they connect. You want to leave a little extra space just because you're going to file down either side and then try to line up the pattern as well. So you just want to give yourself a little extra room, and then once you mark it, you can cut it and then file. So I'm just going to file these parts on the inside here on either side, just to make them more flush. This just helps the connection when you're soldering, so they, you know, are the same. Ignore the floor, it's disgusting. So now when you're ready to solder your bezel, so what's going to happen here is that you're going to want to kind of adjust it so that these points are super flush and like right next to each other. So it helps to, like, I use some pliers to kind of push them together, make sure that they're just going to sit right on top of each other and be lined up, because you're going to have issues if that's not the case. And it's okay to, like, you know, bend and manipulate it a little bit, because once it's soldered, you can snap this back onto the stone shape as long as you give yourself a little bit of extra room. So we'll get that lined up and then we'll take it over to the soldering station. So my setup's kind of weird, but if you don't have a torch already, I recommend the little torch. I started with it and I fucking love it. It's just like my favorite thing ever. And I have my oxygen and acetylene tanks. It's not necessary, and some people don't prefer it, but I've done really well with it, and I really like it, so I just have stayed on that. But for now, what we're going to do is I have the connection there facing away from me, and I'm going to use my handy flux and apply a bit on the inside. So you want to apply it like where you want the solder to flow. So I'm applying it like right on that connection there. And then I'm going to take a little bit of chip solder, and you don't need a lot, but let's see if I can do this with one hand. Okay, so I'm going to put my chip solder right here against that wall there, in hopes that it'll flow. And then when you're doing this, I recommend heating from the outside, because the heat will pull it through. So you're going to heat right here. Don't go too far either direction, kind of just like right in this area. And you don't want to get too close to the bezel initially. You'll see the solder, you'll see the flux go through a few different stages. It'll start kind of getting bubbly, and then it'll get like kind of a white powdery, and then it'll start getting glossy, and that's when you want to start hitting it from the inside, kind of right on this wall, and kind of jump back and forth a little bit. And you'll see it kind of when it's about to flow and you kind of want to add a little bit more, and it should just go right through. So, not my cleanest, but you can clean up the inside and the outside. So I'm going to take a file and kind of just go over these areas real quick. Doesn't take much. Can't stress this enough. After you have your bezel like this, you're going to want to take it to sandpaper or a sanding stick and kind of, I don't know how to hold my phone. You want to make sure that the bottom is flush. And this will also help it solder better to the back plate. So I'm just going to take it on here and kind of run it on the sandpaper back and forth. I can't do it with one hand, but like, you know, just to make sure it's flush. And then you can check the fit with the stone and go from there. Hang on. So now that we did that, we're going to check the fit. And what you're going to do here is just make sure that you have a good fit. Kind of adjust it the way that you need to. See how it's like open here? So I'm going to adjust that just to make sure. Probably have to take it out and do it again. Or just adjust it a little bit. But yeah, as long as you have this good fit and you're able to pop the stone in the top, that's also very freaking important. And make sure that it sits flush. From here, this 24 sheet, I'm probably going to cut a smaller piece because I don't want to have to fire this whole thing. So if you want to just pop that on top and kind of trace around it, leave some room for activities, just in case it helps. But yeah, you don't really want to fire on something this big. You just like cut a smaller chunk off. So I'm going to take my saw to this baby and cut a smaller piece out. Okay, sure, gotta lube her up a little bit. Make sure that the teeth are going out this way and then down, so that you have grip. Also watch the sound because sawing your skin is fucking terrible. So just keep that in mind. So now that we have our chunk here, I like to sand it down. Anything that's sanded is going to have a better time soldering on some level. Is if you're breaking up the metal, basically, it gives it, you know, an easier time to solder to the other piece. So we have this. So now what I'm going to do is make sure it's flush, look around and see if there's any gaps sticking up or anything, if I need to do anything else. And then basically from here, we're gonna just bring her to the soldering station and pop it on there. Okay, so flux. Just kind of gonna, okay. So again, help. Oh my God, flux on things and stuff. Like this is not probably normally how I would do it, but I have one hand, which is fine. This is fine. Okay, and it also helps too. Here's another tip. It helps if you let the flux sit for a moment and kind of get a little more dry after you put your chips on, or my little chip solders. Just because when you start taking heat to it, it won't start bubbling as much. And okay, when I'm placing my chip shotter, you kind of want like tiny guys. The little guys will flow easier. but you want to space them out enough so that it's not like too much. Here, let me do this. So, okay. Spacing them out. It's probably a little too big, but that's okay. And you want to put them right in the little corners there so that it'll flow underneath and through and then around, and you can kind of guide that as you go once it starts flowing. I'm so good at this, making videos for my people. I'm so sorry. Help. Okay, so almost there. Okay, so now that I have enough in here, which it should be enough. Help. Okay, and they're all kind of like touching those corners there. And yeah. Okay, what is this? A hair? Fuck. Get out of there. Okay, so yeah, this is what it looks like. Everything's kind of like tucked away in the corners. And then from here, so how I explained where you want to heat from the outside to pull it through, I will be heating around the entire piece basically. And what the whole point of having the soldering block situation is that it disperses the heat and helps kind of pull it through the whole piece. So when I'm heating around it, it'll kind of pull the solder through, and then you can kind of guide it along the edges if you need to fill in areas more. So I'm going to do that now. And again, this gallery wire is can melt very easily because of these little tips it has, so just be really careful. Try not to put your heat directly on those, really at any point. I've melted my fair share of them, so just got to be extra careful. And see, we're already going through the phases of the flux here, so we're in like the powdery kind of stage now, and then it should get glossy soon. And don't, worry about heating it up super fast. If anything, that's going to be an issue. It's kind of like a slow situation here, where you want to make sure you have even heat and you're getting it right into that block there. So we're starting to flow here. Just kind of want to guide it along as much as possible. Be really careful. Now I fucked up and I didn't bring my stick solder in. I use it as like a backup sometimes to help kind of flow stuff a little bit, because I might need to go back in here and get in some of these corners, which I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna throw this in and flash dip it real quick and then come back. I'm just gonna go back in with my wire solder a little bit and just make sure I fill in any small gaps. I didn't put enough chip solder, I don't think, but sometimes I just have issues with this part because I'm a person. So we're just gonna go through the same process and watch the flux go through those phases again. And if you want to add solder. Now, this is not my finest bezel hour, but I'm gonna go Bob Ross and be like, we're not all perfect because we're human and blah blah blah, and just like turn it into little happy trees or whatever the fuck. So it's fine. We're here. We have this situation. And now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna drill a hole kind of right in the middle and then saw out a bit of the inside. You can like trace it out. You can do whatever shape you really want. It just helps for cleaning purposes, setting purposes, etc. So I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna saw out the inside. So I'm gonna thread my saw blade through there and then saw around the inside. Not like super close. You'll see. I'll show you after I'm done. Okay, bye. Now from here, I'm just gonna saw around the outside. Just be really careful and make sure you're not taking away any of the texture from the gallery wire. You just get as close as possible, and you can always file off the excess. Like, some people use snips for this. I don't have the snips yet. It's something I've been meaning to get, but I do not have them, so I'm gonna just do it this way. Okay, so now we're just gonna go around and file it here. Just be careful. I also want to mention that you don't have to take away the entirety of the outside of the bezel. If you don't want to, you can braid some wire, add some granules to the outside around this. Like, leave a little extra metal around the outside and add little flourishes. There's so many options. I'm just going super basic right now because it's like, you know, just doing it. So now we're like almost flush at this point. And what I'm going to do after this is take some sanding sticks just to the outside, maybe like a pink guy. Just kind of blend it a little bit more. I don't know where all my sanding sticks are, but it's fine. Everything's fine. So now we have somewhat of a sense of this guy here. So from here, you can make sure your stone fits because that's, you know, it should fit. And that's why I take the back out. But you can use floss too to make sure. You can pop a piece of floss in there before you put the stone in. Make sure, but should be good. And now I'm gonna get into this situation here. So I'm gonna open this up a little bit more because I kind of want these guys to be sitting on either side, not right in the middle like that. So this is gonna come open a little bit more. I might have to file it again. Okay, so I am going to sand the back of this. Ideally file it first to make sure you're gonna need burr, just to deburr it. But so similar kind of situation here. I set it up, I added the flex, and then I'm adding the chip solder on the insides like this, and then I'm gonna heat around it. A few tools I forgot to mention are these guys. Like, if I forget what it's called. Bezel pusher and, I'm not this dumb. It's this thing that helps, burnishing tool. That thing. I'm just gonna use my bezel pusher to set the thing. Hold on. Help. So I'm just gonna go lightly at first and come from like different sides so that it's not gonna be like weirdly pressed in from one side to the other. So kind of go like how if you're doing a normal bezel, this is kind of what you would do too. Come in from opposite sides and then start going around. And I'm just doing it lightly at first to get it centered and tucked away. If that makes sense. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, sorry. But gallery wire is just fun, dude. I have a fun time with it, even though it's a pain in my ass sometimes. It's fun and it's pretty and it's really satisfying when you get it lined up the right way with the pattern. Be careful, depending on what stone you're using, just be really careful because you could just crack that bitch, which I've done, and that also just sucks so much. So now I'm going to start pushing it a little bit tighter here as I go around. And from here you're just going to oxidize and polish if you want to throw it in the tumbler, depending on the stone. I might clean up the bottom a little bit more because I have a little overflow solder down there. It's not too bad, but I can always buff that out too. But yeah, we have a ring. She's pretty cool. Not too shabby, especially because I haven't done bezels in a minute. I did one for a frame for the retreat, I think, or two, and before that I don't know last time I did one, but yeah, so there she is. She pretty. Look at you. So, yeah.